The holidays have arrived at the Home Depot, and we're here to help bring the excitement with decor for every part of your home. Check out our wide assortment of easy-to-assemble pre-lit trees so you can spend less time setting up and more time celebrating. And bring your holiday spirit outdoors with unique decor like one of our Santa inflatables. Whatever your style, find the right pieces at the right prices this holiday season at the Home Depot.
Get 40% off Abercrombie Kids sweatshirts and sweatpants during their coziest sale ever. When sweats are all they want to wear, stock up on sets that are both comfy and on trend. Shop in the Abercrombie Kids app, online, and in stores to save up to 40% off all sweatshirts and sweatpants. Offer valid in stores and online October 8th, 2025 to October 13th, 2025 in US and Canada. Excludes clearance. Online price reflects discount.
You are listening to Women's Running Stories, where exceptional women runners share inspirational stories about their running experiences.
I think it's like a Les Brown quote. It's like, shoot for the moon and land among the stars. And that's what I think with my running. Some of my goals, I nailed them and some I didn't. But in the process of going for those goals, it led to bigger things like being in a documentary, being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and helping to create the list. So I can't complain. Hi, my name is Shawanna White. I currently live in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and I am a PE teacher that enjoys running so much.
Yes, this episode features Shawanna White, who does love to run so much. And that is evident by the fact that she is a very prolific competitor. And she has been recognized for her many accomplishments and contributions to the running community. She has been featured in the running documentary Breaking 3 Hours, Trailblazing African American Women Marathoners. In 2022, she was inducted into the National Black Distance Running Hall of Fame, and she did help create the list, which keeps an accounting of all of the American-born Black women who have broken 3 hours in the marathon. And she has broken 3 hours 16 times, more than any other American-born Black woman ever. But before we hear more from Shawanna, I want to welcome you to Women's Running Stories. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I am the host of this podcast. And thank you so much for being here. I love Shawanna's story, and I am so happy to finally get her on the podcast. I have wanted to feature her for some time now, so I am really happy that time has come. And I'm doing something a little bit different with Shawanna's story. This is going to be a 2-part story. Today's episode tells Shawanna's running story up through about 2022. And part 2, which will drop on Thursday, just in a couple days, will catch you up to today. So stay tuned for that. And all you really need to know for this episode is that Shawanna has been running since she was young. She runs a lot, and she runs very fast. She also goes after big goals, and indeed, she has been groundbreaking in her accomplishments, and she is a role model. Shawanna also has a contagious positivity. It is something she is very well known for, and it inspires those around her and far, far beyond. This positivity also keeps Shawanna focused on running and racing her very best through all the ups and downs that come with being a competitive runner. And you will come to appreciate how all of this came to be. So let's get into it. Let's hear this part 1 of Shawanna White's running story, beginning with how she first got into the sport. Now here to tell her story is Shawanna White.
as a child, I was very active outside, and even in PE and field day. It really started in middle school. My PE teacher, who was the field day instructor, I was winning all the races, and he asked me to run track. And at the time, I asked my grandmother, and she said no. And so that was over. Then later on, a few years, when I was in 10th grade, my high school coach, he saw me and he asked the same question if I wanted to run track. And at that point, I would love to, but you need to ask my grandmother, because the last time I asked her, she said no. And so he asked her, and she finally said yes. So I started a sophomore year, and I started off as a 800 and 1600 meter runner. And then after my first track season, I didn't qualify for state or anything, but I did win the city championship, which is just all the Atlanta public schools that compete against each other. And then after my sophomore year, my coach told me that I would run cross country, and I had no idea what cross country was. And some of my teammates were explaining that I will be running in the woods, and I was like, that doesn't sound fun at all, but coach think it's a good idea to help with track, so we'll do it. And I actually ended up being pretty good in cross country, and I actually received a scholarship for the University of West Georgia to run cross country. In college, when I went to the University of West Georgia, at the time, they didn't have track and field. It wasn't considered as one of the sports. Our coach just took us to track meets during the off season. So the big thing was cross country. So at the time, I really did enjoy cross country when I was in college. I really had fun with cross country. But my freshman year, my freshman year, over the summer before we came to school, the coach gave us training to do over the summer, and I didn't do that. And so I pretty much learned the hard way, because I was having a hard time doing the workouts, completing the workouts. But then I did learn a hard lesson, because at one point I was slacking on the workouts and not really giving my all. And at one point, my coach threatened to take away my scholarship because I just wasn't trying. Because when I first started, those workouts, they were so hard. I'd never done anything like that before in my life. And, I think the coach just really wanted me to just stick through and stop dropping out of workouts. So I did. That was one important lesson that I learned, that, I have to always finish something that I start, regardless of what the end result may be. Then that following summer, I actually followed his plan. And each year, I just got better and better and better. And so it made the experience funner. And I became the person on my team that was just going the extra mile or working harder, because I was so focused on trying to just get better. I remember one time, our coach gave us an option to do this hill called Sony Hill. I don't know why you call it Sony. Maybe it was behind a plant or something. I have no idea. But it's like a dirt gravel road that's 1,000 meters. And it was an option. And nobody showed up but me. It was just me and coach, him and his truck. I would run up to the top of the hill, and then he'll drive me back down the hill as fast as he can, and then shoot me out the truck, and then I just go back up the hill. And, that season was one of my best seasons. That's when I actually, placed second in conference. So, college was fun. I had so much fun with my teammates and, training. It was hard, but once I got used to it, I enjoyed it. Like, I really like pushing myself. So it was really fun. After I graduated, I was kind of tired of running. Just, running all the miles and doing all the things. I was just like, I need a break for this. And at the time, I was dating this guy who, wanted to become a rapper. And so I kind of like got drawn into his world. Even though I didn't have no desire to do such a thing, but like at the time, they would write lyrics and I would actually perform the lyrics or rap or whatever terminology they may use. So that's what I was doing for a while. And then eventually I started teaching. And then, I started teaching at a charter school in Georgia. And at the time, I was the only PE teacher. And, the principal was asking me, to try to find some sports for the kids. And so I ended up finding this program that catered towards charter schools. And at the time, they had a track exhibition meet. It was like a one-time thing. And so because we was entering the league to only play football and basketball. And so, since I ran track, I was like, okay, I will make an announcement and see if any kids want to come out and run this one-time track meet. Like, we'll train for, I think we only trained for like 4 weeks. And so we ran the track meet. The kids really had a good time. And they was like wanting to do more. And I was like, oh, but they don't have a track league in this charter school, in this charter league. And so one of my parents came up to me and said that we can run in park and recs. And I was like, oh, really? Yeah, that sounds just like summer track that I used to do. And so we entered in that. And then just watching my kids work so hard, I felt kind of bad. I was like, I'm asking these kids to do these things and I'm not even doing them myself. And so I was like, I should try to run and chase goals or chase something. And so honestly, my students that I coach, they inspired me to get back out there. And I did. And I ended up finding a running club called the South DeKalb Striders. And I started going out with them to go run because, for me, I can run on my own all the time. But when I'm coming back, it's important for me to just be around runners to stay encouraged and to stay motivated. And so I started running with that group. And within that group, I met 2 young gentlemen at the time, Cliff DePass and John Davis. And I guess they saw potential in me. And they were like, if you keep working hard, you can join the Ladies in the Red. And I was like, what? The Ladies in the Red? And at the time, they was talking about Atlanta Track Club, competitive team. And so I was like, okay, well, if you guys think I can do this, and, so, I just started running with them. And then eventually, I started just chipping away at my time. And I was eventually able to qualify and make that team, where I have met some of my best of friends. Like I said, like I met John Davis and Cliff DePass, and they like to race a lot. And and at the time I wasn't really racing a lot myself. I was just getting back into it. And, once I got fitter, it just became fun. And then also I think another thing that really, really helped me to chase, like to just run all the races, because at the time, the Atlanta Track Club had a Grand Prix. And then at the end, if you had the most points by winning races and coming in the top 3, then you get some cool prize at the banquet. So I think that created my passion of becoming what I call a serial racer. And then later on, I met somebody who told me not only, you're running all these races, but you probably need to look into some races that are having like cash prizes, since you are going to be running races anyway, since you like to race. And I was like, really? I can run a race and win money? What? And so I was like, okay. And so then I was like, all right. So after that, I just started running so many races for cash prizes. And then along the way, I met friends who had similar goals. And, it was fun because we made it a trip. And it's like a girl trip, or it's a mixed trip with guys and girls. And, that made it really fun because, I think I always been a competitive person growing up as a child, like just going out and just trying to be the best, or, whether it's board games or kickball or whatever. So, with the running, that's something I'm actually pretty good at it, because, most hand-eye coordinated sports, I'm not really great at those because I have all these eye problems, but I found a sport that I can excel in. And, you meet so many great people, and then you can go to these races with these people. So, I mean, it's just fun. So with the marathon, I'm really shocked that I am running marathons, or even, I actually enjoy them. But, at one point I thought people who ran marathons were crazy, because, like, how in the world would you want to run 26.2 miles? That's like running to another town. So why would somebody want to do that? That doesn't even sound fun at all. But, with my serial racing background, one weekend, actually in South Carolina, it was in Conway, and I can't remember the name of the race, but on that day there were 3 races. There was a 10K, a 5K, and a 1 mile race, and you had probably about 10 to 15 minutes in between each race. And so I ran all 3 races. I ran pretty solid times and won some money along the way. And then the next day, me and my boyfriend at the time, we decided to go to North Carolina and run the Outer Banks half marathon the next day. And I ran 1:22 or something of that nature, 1 hour and 22 minutes. After all that running the day before, and then I was like, you know what? Maybe I can do the marathon. And so then, I decided to try a marathon. My first marathon was Albany Marathon. And at the time, I think I did coach myself. I didn't have a coach for that one. Yeah, I was self-coach for my first one. And my same friends, one of my friends that I met from the South DeKalb Striders, they told me to take my current half marathon time, add that 2 times, and then add 10 minutes. And at the time, I'm a little bit faster, but it was like 79:53. That was my half marathon PR at the time. And so I was just like, okay, I just made it like I just rounded up to 120, and I was like 240 and 250. Okay, cool. I can break 3 hours. So in my first marathon, I was thinking about breaking 3 hours instead of trying to complete the race. So I'm running. I go out with the girls who's running like 125. And then eventually I died, and I found myself walking a whole mile. And then eventually I started back running, and I'm just running. And I finally made it to the finish line, and I ran 3:12. And everybody was like, you Boston qualified. And I was like, what? But I didn't break 3 hours. I wanted to break 3 hours because my friend said if I double this and add 10 minutes, then, that's what I wanted to do. And that didn't happen. And so then, eventually I ran Kiowa Marathon where I broke 3 hours. I ended up running 2:55. So, I went out a little slower and made sure I fuel, because that first race I really didn't drink anything. I didn't really drink or take anything. So, I kind of I got it right on the second one around. At first, it was just about breaking 3 hours. And then, when I actually ran in Kiowa, when I ran that marathon on that day, it felt amazing. And I mean, sometimes marathons can feel great and sometimes they don't. But that day, it felt so good. And I was just like, wow, this is just so fun, because you just see so much, and then like the pain in the marathon is so slow, and that's the part I like about it the most, because it's like a slow grind to the pain instead of like in a 5K. It's like, whew, it just hits you right there, and you're just fighting all the way. But in the marathon, for me, I'm just fighting towards the end, and instead of like in the beginning of the race. And after breaking 3 hours, and then at the time, that's where I met one of the coaches. I had a lot of coaches along the way. And, he put the bug in my ear that, you can qualify for the trials. And I had no idea what that was either. And so I was like, okay, this sounds fun. And, and I just enjoyed the challenge of getting faster. And I felt like in the marathon, I felt like there was so much room for me to improve. And then at the same time, as I was running the marathon, it was actually helping my shorter races, like the 5K to 10K and the half marathon. And I was like, wow, this marathon is actually making me faster in the 5K. This is crazy. But, so, and I just enjoy it. I enjoy the training. I enjoy running all the miles. Like, it's really fun. So ultimately, I did not qualify for the Olympic trials, and the trials that I was trying to go for was 2020. And well, actually before that, it was really 2016. But in 2013, I had to have hip surgery. So, after that process, it was just a process of learning how to walk again, and just how to run and all of that. And it just took time to build my fitness back up. But eventually, when it was time for 2020 trials, I was really excited and just, going for it. And, back, I think it was 2018 was when I got the closest to my goal. I missed it by 19 seconds at the new One City Marathon in Newport News, Virginia. And I remember that day so clearly. I was running good. It was hard. And I glanced at my watch towards the end, and I was like, wow, I am about to do this. And I just kept running and running. And then I finally make it to the finish line, and I see the clock, and I'm like, wait, what happened? I didn't feel like I slowed down, but I was like, wow, I just ran a PR. I mean, I never really thought I would be a 2:45 marathoner, period. That was never in my head. I just wanted to break 3 hours. So on that day, I really was so excited, even though I didn't meet the goal, like, because I just ran my fastest ever. So, I was reading Amby Burford book about women first or something along that line. And in that book, I read a story. It's about a lot of different women that did great things in running. And I read one about Marilyn Bevins. She was the first African-American woman to break 3 hours in a marathon. So, this kind of like go hand in hand with my journey of trying to qualify for the trials. And, I was like, okay, so this was first lady that broke it 3 hours. So I was like curious, have there ever been any Black American females to qualify for the Olympic trials? Is what I'm trying to do, is that even possible? Like, do people like me actually qualify for the Olympic trials in the marathon in the first place? And so that's when I reached out to Abby with all of these questions. And then he forwarded my questions to Anthony Reed. Anthony Reed from Black Marathoners. And then I think he forwarded to Gary Corbett. And then later, Gary Corbett, he reached back out to me and told me that he was going to do the research. And then eventually he did all of the research and created a list. And at the time, the list was very, very small, because at one point I was 4th overall on the list until they started to find more ladies on the list. And I'm really happy that the list exists because, you know, I was looking for inspiration, and now all these ladies have us and several other people to aspire and help them to realize that you too can break 3 hours as long as you work hard. So, it's just to realize that, African American women in the United States, we too can run a marathon. We too can break 3 hours because, all the examples that I saw of ladies running fast were the East Africans, and I love them because, I'm a really huge running nerd. But I love them, but I just wanted to know, like, Black American, African American women from here in the United States, do they do this such thing? And Gary Corbett creating that list, that was the best thing ever because it just inspired so many ladies. And I even met one of my friends who I ran on a relay. I convinced her to run on a relay with strangers. I mean, she didn't even really know me. The only reason she knew me was because of the list. And she was doing this during Black History Month. She was doing this, I guess kind of like a shout out or to people, and she had tagged me on one, and I was like, wow. And so then I just reached out onto her on Instagram, and then we started talking, and she actually ran on a Blue Ridge relay team with me and some other African American people, and we was actually the first African American team to ever complete the Blue Ridge relay. That was really cool. And then I also met another friend that, that aspired to be, break 3 hours from the list too, because she saw me on the list and she reached out to me, and now we're good friends, and it's so, for me, it's just so exciting just to see all the new ladies on the list. Like, it's even encouraging to me. Like, it's just so awesome. Like, you know, I just feel like the list is just gonna keep motivating more, and we're gonna actually see a growth, and the start line will be more diverse at your local races. And that's what I wanted with the list and just in general. I was inducted into the Black Marathon Hall of Fame. Like, I don't even it's I still don't even understand how and why this has happened. Little old me, and I'm just thinking, like, what? I it's still I don't know, like, you know it's like, it's crazy that people, like, you accomplish so much. And to me, the one thing I think that I do value the most is when I ran the most sub-3 hours marathons. But I just feel like any other thing I've done is just, to me, it just feel like a regular runner. But it's such an honor because I'm in there with some greats like Marilyn and others, like, and some of the people that I was in the breaking 3 hours, they were there. Some of them were there for the weekend, which was really cool. I mean, like, it's just, it's so amazing. And I know all the things I'm achieving right now is really making my granddaddy happy. Rest in peace. Because, growing up, his way of motivating me was to tell me that I couldn't run. And I just took that and literally ran with it. Like, I'm going to prove this man wrong. And, later on in life, he told me, I just said that because I wanted to encourage you, because I just felt that you was going to give up. And I was like, you know what? Well, that actually worked because I was determined not to quit. And just, getting that award was just like, I felt like I was just really making my granddaddy proud. Both of my granddaddies, who are both passed away, because they both really enjoyed my running and was very supportive of it and was happy to see me succeed. And so, it's just so cool just to think that a little girl just outside playing in the streets, just being able to accomplish these things and be amongst all these great runners and just great people, it's just amazing. And I think that I'm still am running, and I still have some big dreams that I want to achieve, but with the process, it all just take time, and you just have to be patient and just believe in it.
Shawanna continues to have big goals, and she continues to believe in her abilities to achieve those goals. And that does bring us to the end of this part 1 of Shawanna White's running story. In part 2, she'll pick up with what the last few years have looked like and how her running and racing are going these days. And she'll fill you in on her big goals. Thank you so much, Shawanna, for coming on the podcast and sharing your running story. I really loved hearing more about the details of how you became the incredible positive force, groundbreaking runner, and outstanding racer you are today. And thank you, dear listener, for being here. I always appreciate you coming and listening to these stories. And I know you, like me, will want to keep up with Shawanna White. So look to the show notes and I will provide links on how you can do that. I will also provide links to the documentary Breaking 3 Hours, the National Black Marathoners Association and National Black Distance Running Hall of Fame, and I will link to the list. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you do not miss future episodes, including part 2 of Shawanna's running story, which, again, will drop this Thursday. That does bring me to the end of this episode. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I'm the host and producer of Women's Running Stories. And until this Thursday, I do wish you healthy, joyful, very positive strides forward. Women's Running. Women's running stories.
Tonight's the first date that's been weeks in the making. Hair? Done. Nails? Done. Every square inch of your body exfoliated. Then you see it. A pesky pimple the size of a respectable mountain. The good news? Mighty Patch Pimple Patches can absorb gunk in just 6 hours. Patch the problem area and shrink the look of whiteheads faster than your makeup skills could anyway. Shop Mighty Patch at all major retailers.